The vacation is over as UFC is set to return this Saturday night at UFC Kansas City, and it features a big welterweight showdown between Ian Machado Garry and Carlos Prates. And you got to give it up to Ian Garry. I mean, this guy does not take easy fights. Shavkat, Rakhmonov, now Carlos Prates on relatively short notice. Forget about it. Also, is DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev delayed? We're getting reports that DDP might be injured, right? We still don't have the facts on that, but this is what's being reported by multiple outlets. So we'll get into these topics and give you the fight predictions for Kansas City next.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA Podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
What up? What up? This is your boy Chris Cross checking in. This is the TC MMA podcast, and some big stories coming out over the last several days. Let's dive right into them. Then we'll get into your top 4 fights for UFC Kansas City this Saturday night. We'll also preview the entire card, so stay tuned for that. But the number one story, if it's true, there's a report by multiple outlets being reported by, and forgive me if I mess up the name, Kevin Ioli, right, reporter, is saying Dricus du Plessis may be injured, and that'll nix his title fight with Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 317, and they're going to need a new main event. More on that in a second. But if true, this is a terrible, terrible setback again for Khamzat Chimaev, who it seems like every time he's about to fight, there's another major setback. I mean, you can go all the way back to 2020 in all the setbacks with Leon Edwards. That fight never happened. Then the Robert Whittaker, Igor Meliskarov had to step in, then Khamzat comes back and ends up beating him. So Khamzat keeps winning. He's 14-0. He's the future of the middleweight division, maybe the light heavyweight, but he just can't seem to get over the finish line. I mean, it's just setback after setback, and this time it's not even his fault. But as Khamzat fans, to be honest, you're not going to hear a lot of rumblings from Khamzat Chimaev fans because we're used to it at this point. Even though it's not his fault, we're just used to the setbacks. And, if this fight gets pushed to later in the year, October, November, December, it's like, fine, it is what it is. It is what it is. The bottom line is Khamzat and DDP are going to fight at some point. It doesn't look good for this summer, and Khamzat is going to win the middleweight title, so everybody just relax. All right? And some of you aren't even hearing this yet because it's slowly coming out, right? Some media outlets don't want to report this until they know for sure that DDP is injured. So, more to come on this story, but that's the report. And we'll see if it's 100% true. And if it is, you wouldn't expect the UFC to come out real quick because now they have to find another main event. And as UFC 315 approaches in about 2 or 3 weeks, they don't have much time. And really, there's only 2 options: lightweight and heavyweight. That will be Islam Makhachev coming back on relatively quick turnaround for a champion, right? Because he just fought in January when he dusted off Renato Moicano, who had to be submitted or exchanged or substituted, whatever word you want to use, for Arman Sarukian. Then now you bring either Charles Oliveira or Ilia Topuria back into the fray. I don't see them getting the heavyweight done this quick. I don't see, it is still 3 months. It'll be, 2 months. June 28th. It's already, late April. So you got 2 months to prepare for that fight, and that's going to be when you prepare for the middleweight division and now you got to go to another division, those fighters need time to get ready, and I'm sure uh, there's a lot of calls being made and things trying to be settled before this news really breaks. But that's what's coming down the line, is that DDP and Hamza are delayed. Won't happen at UFC 317. In another story, UFC champion Magomed Ankalaev sends a warning to Alex Pereira. Right? Ankalaev wrote, "Alex, I am ready to give you a rematch if you really want it. Just be prepared for a storm in the next fight, the storm that you never face in this sport." So Ankalaev is always talking about the storm, and he's going to come in and bring it, and all the, he beat Pereira. Don't get me wrong. They say something was wrong with Pereira for that fight. I don't know. He didn't look 100%, but he's also getting older at 37, 38 years old. So how much is that a factor? Bottom line is there's no storm from Ankalaev. Can Pereira win the belt back? Sure he can, but he's going to need his best fight. And, we're either going to move on with Ankalaev or move on with Pereira, and then we're just looking at who's the next guy in line. That's where we're at. But I don't think there's any storm coming. You don't see a lot of finishes from Ankalaev. That's why he had the setback with Jan Blachowicz back in the day. They fought to a draw. Probably a fight that Ankalaev won, but listen, when you go to a decision, it's out of your hands. So if he's going to bring the storm, we need to see a finish. Also, according to MMA Junkie, Dustin Poirier not emotional about impending retirement. It's looking like he may fight at UFC New Orleans in front of the home crowd, and it could be a send-off fight. And he's just getting older, and title fights are few and far between. Telling MMA Junkie, I can still do this at the top level for a few more years. There's no doubt in my mind. But what am I fighting for? And he goes on to explain, as you would think, am I fighting for a paycheck? I'm here to win titles, more or less. And if I'm not fighting for titles, then what am I doing? I respect the sport too much. He's saying all the right things. And once these guys start contemplating retirement, it's usually over. But Dustin Poirier still feels like he's young enough. So I'm not convinced that this is going to be the retirement fight. Of course, it's going to be hyped up as such. But if the UFC comes out and says, hey, we need you to fight for the title, or you win this fight, you fight for the title, then all of a sudden he's back in. And now you need a fight for Islam Makhachev on International Fight Week. It's looking like, if Hamza and DDP are truly not fighting. So, the Diamond's just got to chill. But if he's ready to retire, that's fine. But I don't think his time is done yet. He's getting into the wee hours of the career, but I just don't think that his time is necessarily done just yet. So could we see a retirement fight? Yeah, potentially. But I'm not 100% sold on that being the case. But that's what it's being built around as of right now. Now, this Saturday night, UFC Kansas City, you got some big-time fights up and down this card, especially as you approach the final four fights. I mean, you got some big ones. But earlier on in the card, before we get to some of these top four, you got some good fights in the prelims, too, like Damon Blackshear and Alatang Haili in the bantamweight. Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda, I like that. In the featherweight division, Matt Schnell, Jimmy Flick, flyweight. So you got some names you've heard of. Cameron Simon, 9-2, who I believe was undefeated coming into the UFC, has struggled as of late, but not terribly, just getting some experience. The South African takes on Malcolm Wellmaker, who's undefeated at 8-0. You got Amorim and Polyana Viana, Timmy Kuamba and Roberto Romero. That fight's going to bring some attention for sure. Chelsea Chandler and Jocelyn Edwards. And then you also got Evan Elder versus Gage Young, who's taking this fight on relatively short notice, as Elder's former opponent had to pull out. And there's a lot of news on that situation, but, we'll we'll spare you from it today because we got pressing issues to get into, and that's uh, the main card. Now, early on, you got Igor Meliskarov versus Andre Muniz, then Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby, and we're going to pick this thing up in fight 4. Middleweight fight, big one. Mikel Pereira, 31-12 Brazilian, taking on the German Abu Magomedov. Tell me you don't like this fight. Let's get into it right now. In the middleweight division at UFC Kansas City, you got Mikel Pereira taking on Abu Magomedov. And I like this matchup for obvious reasons. I mean, both guys are very capable of winning. It's Brazil versus Germany in this one, and the Brazilian is the favorite. So let's get into it. Pereira 1-inch shorter at 6'1" compared to the 6'2" Magomedov. Magomedov is 34 years old. It seems like he's younger than Pereira, but Pereira is just 31. Now, in terms of reach, Magomedov has a 5-inch reach advantage. That's a pretty good advantage if you ask me. Both guys stand right-handed. Pereira 4.5 significant strikes per minute to 2.7 for Magomedov. Now, Magomedov lands a takedown on average every round, where Pereira gets one every 3. But both guys are capable of going to the ground. Pereira, 76% takedown defense compared to 100% takedown defense for Magomedov, but I believe he will be tested on the ground in this fight, whether he lands a takedown or whether he gives up a takedown to Pereira. Now, Pereira's coming off the loss to Anthony Hernandez by 5th round KO. Absolutely exposed and dominated in this fight. 152-24 in significant strikes. That's crazy. And even more crazy, 10-0 in takedowns for Anthony Hernandez. So, huge win for him, especially since Pereira was coming off 3 straight first-round finishes. On average, 1 minute into the fight. He beat Ihor Poirier by submission. Mikhail Alexichuk submission. And he KO'd Andre Petroski. So, before the recent loss, he was on an 8-fight win streak in the UFC alone. Now, Magomedov coming off back-to-back wins over Warley Alves by decision and Bruno Ferreira submission. He did lose to Sean Strickland and Kyle Barajo, 2 solid fighters in this division, obviously. Beat Dustin Stoltzfus prior to that, so he's won 3 of 5 since entering the UFC, and it makes him a very tough prediction whether you're for or against him because, you know, he lost to 2 solid competitors and he beat 3 guys that are well below those 2. So he's somewhere in the middle there, but so is Pereira. All right, trying to look at how Pereira is the favorite. I guess you have to look at significant strikes and the fact that he can go to the ground if necessary, but Anthony Hernandez completely exposed him last time out. I don't know if Abu has the same capability. Now, it does seem like Magomedov was surging to the top before he started getting stifled and lost to 2 quality opponents, but I think he's still getting better every time we see him. He's fighting tougher competition in the UFC, but so is Mikel Pereira. Mikel Pereira has a lot of losses outside the UFC too. So when you look at his record and you see 31-12, you got to consider a lot of those losses were outside of the UFC. Since he's been in the UFC, I mean, he's only lost 3 times, won about 8 or 9. So I'm going to lean towards Pereira to get the win here, although I think it's very close. I like when a guy has much more significant strikes, especially when you're talking about a Brazilian, because even though he got dominated against Anthony Hernandez, in most of his fights, he does pretty well on the ground, including back-to-back submissions prior to that loss. So maybe he just had a bad night. That's what we got to hope here. But I'll take the significant strikes and the Brazilian on the ground if necessary for Pereira, in my opinion, to get the win here, move to 32-12. I think it goes to a decision, though, and Pereira wins a close one. Could be a split decision, too. That's how close his fight will be. Middleweight division, that's my opinion. UFC, Kansas City. Yeah, and kicking things off here with a very interesting fight. I mean, this middleweight division is loaded right now, especially when you factor in Hamza and DDP fighting for the title and all the challengers that are in there, including the ones coming up. You know, you got fights like this that are going to be very tough to predict, and a guy like Mikel Pereira is very capable. I mean, he's got the 12 losses, but this is a Brazilian with 31 wins. Abu is stacking up the losses too, so it's just, you know, To me, it's a flip of a coin, but they got Pereira, as a slight favorite here. So, we went with him, which we would anyway, if it's a close fight and you got a Brazilian involved with good numbers. So that's the case here. We like Pereira to get the win. Now, as we jump up to the featherweight division, you got two highly skilled fighters, one of which is going to really be tested. First, you got Giga Chikadze from Georgia, and then you got David Onama from Uganda. Right, a guy that's 13-2, still has something to prove, piling up the wins, couple losses, but this guy uh, is certainly for real. But again, he's got something to prove. So let's jump into this prediction right now. In the featherweight division at UFC Kansas City, you got Giga Chikadze taking on David Onama. And this is a high-level featherweight fight. I mean, Chikadze 15-4, Onama 13-2, Georgia versus Uganda. Gotta love it. Chikadze 1 inch taller at 6 feet. He's 36. Onama right in the prime at 30. I mean, he's at his height right now. Maybe over the next 2 years gets a little better, but he's at peak strength. Both guys 74-inch reach. Both guys stand right-handed. Onama is much more active than Chikadze at 5.6 significant strikes per minute to 3.9. And neither guy really likes to land takedowns. Onama can get one like every 4 rounds. But in an average fight, he's not getting any. Now, Chikadze in his 15 wins has 9 KOs and 1 submission. So the boy knows how to rumble and knows how to finish his opponents, but he's lost 2 of the last 3. Each of the last 3 fights going to a decision. Now, he did beat Alex Caceres, who is a decent fighter, pretty good. But he lost to Arnold Allen by decision and Calvin Kattar by decision. So, losing 2 of the last 3 doesn't mean he's slowing down. It just means he ran into some solid opponents. Now, Onama, just 52% takedown defense, won't be a problem here, but he's on a 3-fight win streak. He landed a KO against Gabriel Santos, then won back-to-back decisions against Jonathan Pierce and Roberto Romero. So both of these guys got enough fights to where the numbers are meaningful. The takedown game is really non-existent in this one. So you got to look at significant strikes, and Onama just outpaces Chikadze. So, he's got a much higher percentage of winning this fight unless Chikadze lands like a big punch or kick or something like that leads to a finish. I just don't see that happening. Onama is getting more and more skillful every time out. He does have the 2 losses, but like I said, he's won 3 in a row. His last loss was to Nate Landwehr. Before that, Mason Jones. So he's gotten much better since those losses, and both of them were by decision. Against Mason Jones, he got taken down 8 times. Against Landwehr, he got taken down 3. So against takedown specialists, he may struggle, especially early in his career, but that's not Giga. Giga's going to want to stand and throw, and that fits right into Onama's wheelhouse. So expect him to get the win here and move to 14-2. The big question is, will he get the finish or not? We'll see. But if it goes to a decision, he's definitely winning this fight, in my opinion. Featherweight division, UFC Kansas City. Yeah, so we're going with Onama, and these last 4 fights on this card are very tough to predict. This is another one, but you got to pick one, and we like Onama. I mean, the guy is continuing to get better. He's still 30 years old, so he's still getting better every time we see him. He's kind of in that peak form. Chikadze is past the peak, but with a tremendous amount of experience. You just got to hope he's slowing down a little bit here for Onama to get the win, or it's going to be a very tough fight. Now in the light heavyweight division, we got a struggling Anthony Smith, who's really trying to get to 40 wins, taking on a tough Chinese fighter. We got a couple of these fights on this card, so you already know which way the crowd's going to be. But Zhang Mingyang, 18-6, this guy is for real. And Anthony Smith has struggled. So let's dive right into this one right now. In the light heavyweight division at UFC at Kansas City, this is your co-main event. You got Anthony Smith taking on Zhang Mingyang, an up-and-coming Chinese fighter who's 18-6. Anthony Smith has been in the game for a while, as you know. He's 38-21 and a huge underdog in this fight. Smith is 2 inches taller at 6'4". He's 36. Mingyang 26. So that's one advantage that Smith has. I mean, obviously it's not an advantage to be older, but he has the experience. Mingyang is just getting better every time we see him, though. So that's a problem for Anthony Smith. Both guys equal reach at 76 inches. Both guys stand right-handed. Mingyang so far 8.6 significant strikes per minute to 3.2 for Anthony Smith, and neither guy really looking to get takedowns. I mean, Anthony Smith over his long career gets one takedown like every 7 rounds. So don't expect any takedowns from Anthony Smith. Now he's lost back-to-back fights to Roman Dolce by decision, got dominated on the feet against Dominic Reyes by KO, got dominated on the feet, so he's really slowing down. But he did beat Vitor Petrino, which was a surprising win, and that was by submission, right? Vitor took him down and ended up getting submitted. So I'm sure Vitor would like to have that fight back. He also lost to Khalil Roundtree Jr. by third round KO, which isn't surprising considering how good Khalil ended up doing against Alex Pereira for the title. So he's lost 3 of the last 4 and really struggling. Mingyang, on the other hand, hasn't lost in the UFC. He beat Tuco Tokos at Road to UFC by KO, then Brenson Ribeiro by first round KO, and Ozzy Diaz first round KO. So this one's simple. I mean, Anthony Smith is slowing down. A part of me thought he retired. I don't know why I thought that way. I thought he announced his retirement after the last fight, but that was a little while ago, so it's hard to remember. But if he did, since he didn't do it after the last fight, he's probably going to do it after this fight. I mean, Anthony Smith is getting close to the end. You're looking at this is his 60th fight, so that might be meaningful. He's also probably trying to get to 40 professional MMA victories, but how long is that going to take? This is just not going to go well for Anthony Smith. I expect a quick finish here by Mingyang, either late in the first round or early second round via KO or really TKO, because the fight will have to be stopped by the ref. That's just my opinion. Mingyang is too much. He gets the win to move to 19-6 here, light heavyweight division, co-main event at UFC Kansas City. Yeah, so I mean, listen, Anthony Smith is struggling, and he's this guy's going to be an announcer. He's got something else to fall back on. So, when you're getting to that point in your life when it's like when you're an up and coming fighter, it's like this is all you got. It's just a whole different level. And now you're in a position where, okay, when fighting's over, you already got another job lined up as a commentator, maybe an announcer in the future, who knows? And it's just not the same Anthony Smith as it used to be, the hunger. And a lot of that is because he's getting older too. So, that's a situation here. And therefore, that's our prediction. Now, as we dive into the main event, this is a big one. When it was announced, we jumped on it. And Machado Garry taking this fight on relatively short notice, couple weeks notice, against a highly skilled Carlos Prates. And he better be ready if he wants to win this fight. Let's jump into it right now. In the welterweight division at UFC Kansas City, your main event. Stepping up on short notice, you got Ian Machado Garry from Ireland, 15-1, taking on the Brazilian. Oh boy, Carlos Prates, who's on a roll. He's 21-6. So both guys at this point, veterans of the game. Now Gary's 2 inches taller at 6'3". He's 27. Prates 31. Prates 3-inch reach advantage. He's a switch stance fighter, so that'll be interesting to see how Garry handles that. It's always an advantage. Garry stands right-handed. Both guys right about 4.5 significant strikes per minute. Both guys aren't really big takedown specialists. Garry gets one like every 4 rounds. Prates gets one like every 7 or 8 rounds. So you may not see any takedowns in this one, especially when Ian Garry has a 73% takedown defense, Prates 91%. So this is going to be a stand-up striking affair. Now, Garry lost his first fight last time out, but it was by decision. He actually outstruck Shavkat 42-37, had 2 submission attempts, but was taken down twice compared to the 1 takedown he had. This is over 5 rounds, so not a lot of output in that fight, and he ended up getting the loss because of it. But before that, he ran off, 8 straight wins against guys like Michael Venom Page, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny. He KO'd D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, and Song Keenan. Now, Carlos Prates, on the other hand, is on a 5-fight win streak, at least in the UFC. It could extend beyond that, The big thing is that they're all by KO, starting at the Contender Series against Mitch Ramirez, then Trevin Giles, Charles Radke, Li Jingliang, Neil Magny. So they both beat Neil Magny in dominant fashion. Garry 91-27 in significant strikes, 2 takedowns, couldn't get the finish. Carlos Prates did. Now, this is going to be a tough fight for both guys, but I'm going to lean towards Ian Garry. Here's why. The guy is proven. He only has 1 loss against a really good fighter. Nothing against Carlos Prates, who's going to be a very tough opponent. And as I always say, don't invite Brazil to the party, right? You don't want to be fighting a Brazilian with such high stakes, but that's exactly what Ian Garry is doing because that's how he's built. He's built tough. That he knows this is a fight that he has to win. There will be no excuses that the fight was taken on short notice after the fact. He knows that. He will not use that as an excuse. But he's coming in to win, and he still has 2 weeks to prepare. So right now, this week, right now, and next week are huge weeks because it's not fight week yet. So you still got 10 days of hardcore training. You're already training, but 10 days of hardcore training before you got to start cutting weight and slowing down and getting ready for the fight. So I think Ian Garry can get the job done. Is it going to be the best Ian Garry we ever seen? I say yes, because he's only 27 years old. Forget the short notice. He's at that age entering the prime window where he's going to get better and better every time you see him. And he's already looked good. So I just feel like he's going to come in and win this fight because there's such high stakes on it. So look for Ian Garry to get the win, mainly on significant strikes. He may have a takedown or two, but where Carlos Prates has such good takedown defense at 91%, that's going to be few and far between and very difficult. But I think Ian Garry's still better on the feet, even though we've seen Prates basically KO everybody. I'm saying that because it's just different when you're in there with Ian Garry. He's going to slow you down. Look what he did to Shavkat. Held in the 47 significant strikes over 5 rounds. That's like eight or 9 per round. So that's what he does. So Ian Garry, in my opinion, gets the win by decision, 5 rounds. It's a big fight on short notice for sure. But he'll get the win in Missouri, in Kansas City. Crowd will go crazy. Ian Garry moves to 16-1 here, welterweight division, UFC, Kansas City. Yeah, so we got Ian Garry winning what should be a highly entertaining fight in the main event at Kansas City. I mean, I really like this fight. Machado Garry versus Rakhmonov was a good fight. Is Carlos Prates that good? We're going to find out a lot in this fight about the future of this division because right now it seems like it's Machado Garry and Shavkat who are on a collision course for the title one day. But you still got Bilal Muhammad. You got obviously the champ. Can anyone really beat him? You got Carlos Prates. You got a host of others in this division. So it's something to keep an eye on for sure. And we'll see if Machado Garry can pull it out. I'm not 100% convinced, but I wouldn't be if I went the other way either. I just think Machado Garry is just a little bit better. But we're going to find out on Saturday night. Highly entertaining main event. And we're 6-7, so we need it. Now, as we jump into the Q&A, let's see, Imus Goldie, I believe, says, your picks are terrible. You're wrong with, you should say, Fioro and Silva as well. Shevchenko and Grasso are winning. And that's very possible. And I like to see someone get hardcore about the women's fighting, right? For sure. And, you see the next one. Mo Larry Curley, thanks for these posts. Your work ethic is amazing. So, and this is why a lot of people don't read the comments, right? I mean, on the first one, you could think it's all over. And in the second one, someone's saying, hey, great job. So this is the difference of comments and a good way to start the Q&A. Goldie's back. Natalia kicks in boxing range. There's a lot of holes in Silva's striking for a boxer like Grasso. Grasso will win by crowding the kicker. Grasso has really good boxing with power. So, and again, it's exciting to see someone get excited about the women's fights. And Natalia Silva is a very good fighter. Grasso is very good too. And I get what you're saying because Grasso is just coming off title fights. And could all of a sudden Natalia Silva just come in here and beat her when she's, that high level? So I understand what you're saying, but I'm still sticking with Natalia Silva to get the win. And it wouldn't be the first time that someone disagreed with me. That's the fight game. We all disagree on almost everything. Robert weighs in on Topuria. Even the champ should have to work their way through the division they move up to, just like everyone else in that division. And I'm not so sure I agree with that. You know, precedent has been set in the past, and yes, depth is on a different level. But Volkanovski didn't have to wait in line. Who did Volkanovski fight before he fought Makhachev? Or maybe he did fight someone. I can't remember. But it seems like Volkanovski's getting a path right to the title, and then a second chance. And he beat Volkanovski. So who's to say Topuria can't win? And now we might be seeing that fight because the UFC is going to need something to sell at 317. Makhachev will sell, but we don't want to see him fight Renato Moicano again. You understand what I'm saying? Brian weighs in on the best division in the UFC. It's a poll we got going now. You got to get involved in this. It's only round one. He said none of these choices. And the way we did it is we cut the 13 divisions into 3 different polls, 4, 4, and 3, I believe, or 11 divisions. And the top 2 advance. So we'll be heading into round 2 this week at some point. And in the past, a lightweight has always been up there. Welterweight has always been second, or one time it was first. And right now it's on the brink of not making it to round or out of the first round. So what are people thinking about the welterweight? Make sure you get involved in those polls so as we go forward, you don't say, hey, I don't like any of these divisions that are in the final. Now's the time to get your votes in. Moving forward, looking at Benoit Saint Denis and Joe Alvarez, a loss against Moicano is a doctor stoppage before round 3. And BSD won round 2. It's not really a TKO. I mean, officially it's listed as a TKO doctor stoppage. So we're going to have to get MMA as a whole to change it if the doctor comes in, but it has to be labeled some way. The fight is a finish. It's not a decision. Goldie's back. Shevchenko is taking over France next month. So big on Grasso and Shevchenko. And I like it, Goldie. Keep weighing in and keep getting on me if you disagree with the picks. I understand. I just want to, sometimes it's hope. I want to see a change in these women's divisions. I want to see some new fighters coming up. And Ryan says, great video. I definitely believe that Kayla Harrison will get the victory on UFC 316. I think so too. And then she fights Nunes. This is why Nunes is already coming back. Because there's already a fear here that Kayla Harrison is going to come in and take over and not be beat for a long time. And while Nunes is young enough, she wants that big fight. That's a money fight too. But it's also a title fight. So what does this mean in terms of the UFC is officially a free agent? It means that the exclusive window with ESPN is over. The UFC is free to negotiate with anybody, and it's anyone's guess who they're going to sign with. I mean, it's anyone's guess who the UFC is going to sign with for the future of UFC rights. And I don't know which way it's going to go. But yeah, the UFC is a free agent right now. And hopefully this week or in the coming weeks, we get some further information. I mean, is the UFC leaving ESPN? That's what everybody wants to know. That's what everybody wants to know. But for now, those are the picks. This is a TCMMA podcast. I'm Chris Cross. Until next time, hope you have a great day and God bless. As always, peace.